Okay, so for your reading today, we're continuing with Fantastic Mr. Fox. But before we start, we've met all of the characters now. And from what we've read so far, we don't like the farmers and we feel sorry for the family of foxes, don't we? Okay. I wonder if the farmers will eventually ever catch the foxes, or if Fantastic Mr. Fox will save them. What do you predict? What do you think's going to happen? Talk to the person next to you. Speak to your grown-up, or tell one of your younger brothers or sisters, or older brothers and sisters if you've got one. Tell somebody in your house what you think is going to happen in this story. And then when we've finished it, later next week, you'll be able to tell them whether you were right or whether you were wrong. Okay. Today we're reading chapters 7, 8 and 9. Don't be put off by this. They're only short chapters. And we'll answer some questions on those. Okay. Reminder, pause the video, try and read it yourself, and then press play and I'll read it to you. Chapter 7, We'll Never Let Him Go. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Bean switched off the motor of his tractor and climbed down from the driver's seat. Bunce did the same. Both men had had enough. They were tired and stiff from driving the tractors all day. They were also hungry. Slowly they walked over to the small fox's hole in the bottom of the huge crater. Bean's face was purple with rage. Bunce was cursing the fox with dirty words that cannot be printed. Boggis came waddling up. "Dang and blast that filthy stinking fox," he said. "What the heck do we do now?" "I'll tell you what we don't do," said Bean. "We don't let him go." "We'll never let him go," Bunce declared. "Never, never, never," cried Boggis. "Did you hear that, Mr. Fox?" yelled Bean, bending low and shouting down the hole. "It's not over yet, Mr. Fox. We're not going home till we've strung you up dead as a dingbat." Whereupon the three men all shook hands with one another and swore a solemn oath that they would not go back to their farms until the fox was caught. "What's the next move?" asked Bunce, the pot-bellied dwarf. "We're sending you down the hole to fetch him up," said Bean. "Down you go, you miserable midget." "Not me," screamed Bunce, running away. Bean made a sickly smile. When he smiled, you saw his scarlet gums. You saw more gums than teeth. "Then there's only one thing to do," he said. "We starve him out. We camp here day and night, watching the hole. He'll come out in the end, he'll have to." So Boggis and Bunce and Bean sent messages down to their farms, asking for tents, sleeping bags, and... Chapter 8. The foxes begin to starve. That evening, 3 tents were put up in the crater on the hill. One for Boggis, one for Bunce, and one for Bean. The tents surrounded Mr. Fox's hole, and the 3 farmers sat outside their tents eating their supper. Boggis had 3 boiled chickens smothered in dumplings. Bunce had 6 doughnuts filled with disgusting goose liver paste, and Bean had 2 gallons of cider. All 3 of them kept their guns beside them. Boggis picked up a steaming chicken and held it close to the fox's hole. "Can you smell this, Mr. Fox?" he shouted. "Lovely tender chicken. Why don't you come up and get it?" The rich scent of chicken wafted down the tunnel to where the foxes were crouching. "Oh, Dad," said one of the small foxes, "couldn't we just sneak up and snatch it out of his hand?" "Don't you dare," said Mrs. Fox. "That's just what they want you to do." "But we're so hungry," they cried. "How long will it be till we get something to eat?" Their mother didn't answer them, nor did their father. There was no answer to give. As darkness fell, Bunce and Bean switched on the powerful headlamps of the 2 tractors and shone them onto the hole. "Now," said Bean, "we'll take it in turn to keep watch. 1 watches while 2 sleep, and so on all through the night." Boggis said, "What if the fox digs a hole right through the hill and comes out on the other side? You didn't think of that one, did you?" "Of course I did," said Bean, pretending he had. "Go on then, tell us the answer," said Boggis. Bean picked something small and black out of his ear and flicked it away. How many men have you got working on your farm? He asked. 35, Boggis said. I've got 36, Bunce said. And I've got 37, Bean said. That makes 108 men altogether. We must order them to surround the hill. Each man will have a gun and a flashlight. There will be no escape then for Mr. Fox. So the order went down to the farms, and that night 108 men formed a tight ring around the bottom of the hill. They were armed with sticks and guns and hatchets and pistols and all sorts of other horrible weapons. This made it quite impossible for a fox, or indeed for any other animal, to escape from the hill. The next day, the watching and waiting went on. Boggis and Bunce and Bean sat upon small stools, staring at the fox's hole. They didn't talk much. They just sat there with their guns on their laps. Every so often, Mr. Fox would creep a little closer towards the mouth of the tunnel and take a sniff. Then he would creep back and say, "They're still there." "Are you quite sure?" Mrs. Fox would ask. "Positive," said Mr. Fox. "I can smell that man Bean a mile away. He stinks. And we aren't any of us strong enough for that after 3 days and nights without food." "Yes, we are, Dad," cried the small foxes, jumping up and running to their father. "We can do it. You see if we can't. So can you." Mr. Fox looked at the 4 small foxes and he smiled. "What fine children I have," he thought. "They are starving to death and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, but they are still undefeated. I must not let them down." I suppose we could give it a try," he said. "Let's go, Dad. Tell us what you want us to do." Slowly, Mrs. Fox got to her feet. She was suffering more than any of them from the lack of food and water. She was very weak. "I'm so sorry," she said, "but I don't think I'm going to be much help." "You stay right where you are, my darling," said Mr. Fox. "We can handle this by ourselves." Okay, so the end of chapter 9 there. You've got your 5 quickfire questions. Question 1, what does swore a solemn oath mean on page 29? Question 2, why did the farmers send for sleeping bags, tents and supper? Question 3, why did neither Mr. Fox or Mrs. Fox answer the children's question? That's at the bottom of page 31. Question 4, name 3 types of weapon the workers from the farm had. That's page 33, you'll find the answer to that one. And question 5, Mrs. Fox is described by Roald Dahl as weak on page 36. Can you think of another word which means the same as weak that he could have used instead? Okay, so remember we call this a synonym. Something means the same, okay? So another word that Roald Dahl might have used instead of weak. Okay, there are your sentence stems in red. Remember to answer in full sentences. Pause your video and have a go. Okay, fabulous, well done. Okay, so the answers. Swore a solemn oath means they made a promise to each other. The farmers sent for sleeping bag, tents and supper because they were going to camp out overnight and watch the foxhole. Neither Mr. or Mrs. Fox answered the children's questions because they did not know the answer themselves. Okay, you've got 4 weapons there. If you've got 3 of those, you've got the question right. So you could have had sticks, guns, hatchets or pistols. And chapter 9, question 5, another word which means weak is, you could have anything that is kind of, that means she's feeling frail, feeble, fragile, tired, any of those also mean weak. Okay. Or brain power questions. Question 6. How can we tell how determined the farmers are to catch the foxes? Use evidence from the text to support your answer. Question 7. How did Mr. Fox think of his new plan successfully? And question 8. How do you think Mr. Fox feels about his children? What gives you that impression? So you've got your sentence stems in red. Make sure you're answering in full sentences. Pause the video while you have a go. Well done. So, we can tell how determined the farmers are to catch the foxes through various points in those 3 chapters. Okay, you can see Bunce, Boggis, Bean are yelling things like, "We'll never let him go. Never, never, never. Did you hear that, Mr. Fox?" That shows us that they are very determined and they're threatening the foxes. Okay, they're shouting at them. You can look at the exclamation marks. Okay, they're shouting at them. They're trying to intimidate them. We'll take it in turns to keep watch. 1 watches while 2 sleep, and so on all through the night. That shows us, as the reader, they have a plan. Okay, their plan shows that they are, let's go back to that word in the question, determined to succeed. They've got a plan. Okay, and they are also willing, with that plan, to use all of their resources. What do we mean by resources? Yeah, resources are things that they have. So they've got all of their workers, they're working as a team. Okay, they're working as a team to try and get Mr. Fox caught. Okay. Question 7. How did Mr. Fox think of the new plan successfully? Okay, if we have a look, page 35, we've got here, it's this extract here which tells us how Mr. Fox thought of his new plan. So Mr. Fox thought of his new plan by sitting quite still with his eyes closed, not hearing what the others were saying. So he wasn't listening, he wasn't focusing on that. Okay, he was focusing on what was happening in his brain. Okay, his plan. Okay, he'd not spoken in a long time. He wasn't joining in the conversation. He had sectioned himself off and he was coming up with a plan in his own head. Okay. And question 8. How do you think Mr. Fox feels about his children? What gives you this impression? Okay. So, have a look at this section. Reread it. A word that springs into my mind when I read that extract is, again, please excuse my writing, is proud. Okay, I think if I was answering that question, I think Mr. Fox feels proud of his children. Okay, I think he feels proud of his children because they are and that you could use a quote from the text, they are starving to death and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, but they are still undefeated. Okay, that undefeated means they are still enthusiastic, they are still willing to have a go, they are still going to try to make things better. Okay, so I think he's probably feeling quite proud that he's managed to raise not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 children that are all that enthusiastic and willing to help. Okay. He's also, I think this says, I must not let them down, makes him think he has got to make sure this works. He's got to give it his best effort. Okay.
Good morning, class 3. I hope you got on okay yesterday with your maths. So before we get started on today's lesson, we will check your answers from yesterday. So I've got my purple pen ready here. If you make sure that you've got something so you can have a go at marking yours from yesterday. Now, please remember, if you've got some wrong, it is not the end of the world. If you understand where you've gone wrong, brilliant, that's perfect. If you're still not sure, then you can always have a little look at yesterday's video again and have another little practice if you're not sure. Okay, so we were finding non-unit fractions of amounts. So the first question was 2/3 of 9. Okay, now our trick to finding non-unit fractions was divide by the denominator and then multiply by the numerator. So if we're looking at 2/3 of 9, we're going to divide by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, and then you times it by 2. Okay, so 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so well done if you've got that one. Give yourself a tick. The second one underneath, so I'm going to go the top one and the bottom one and then move on to the next column. Okay, so we're looking at 2/3 again, but this time it's 2/3 of 21. So our trick is divide by the denominator. I'm going to do 21 and I'm going to divide it by 3. Now, how many 3's go into 21? Well, I know that 7 times 3 is 21. So 21 divided by 3 is 7. And then we times that by our numerator. So 7 times 2 equals 14. So well done if you got 14. Remember, if you're not sure, have another look at it, or pause this now and have another look at your other answers, okay? And see if you can correct them if you think, oh, I might have made a mistake with some of these, and if you want to go back and have another little go before marking them all properly. That's absolutely fine if you want to do that. I'm going to move on to the middle ones now. So 25, we're looking at 2/5 of 25. So we divide by the denominator. So 25 divided by 5 is 5. And then we multiply by the numerator. So 5 times 2 is 10. Okay. 3/5 of 30. So we divide 30 by 5, which is 6. And then we multiply it by our numerator. So 6 times 3 is 18. Well done if you got those. And I'm well done if I didn't trick you by changing it from 2/5 to 3/5. So on to the last column, we're looking at quarters, and both of them are 3/4. So the first one is 3/4 of 12. So 12 we divide by our denominator. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and then we multiply it by our numerator. So 3 times 3 is 9. Okay. Remember, if we're finding quarters, we can half it and half it again. So we could have halved 12, which is 6, half it again, which is 3, and then multiply it by 3 is 9. Okay, and then 3/4 of 12, so we divide by our denominator. Sorry, 3/4 of 24, our last one. So 24 divided by 4 is 6, and then multiply it by 3. Okay, so 6 times 3 is 18. Okay, so there are your 6 answers for your Do It from yesterday. Well done if you've got them right. If you haven't, have a little think. We'll have a look at where you've gone wrong. If you understand where you've gone wrong, that's brilliant. If you want to have another go at it, that's fine. Have another little go. Okay, on to your Secure It then. So Gary says that to find 2/3 of 24, you divide by 2 and multiply by 3. He says the answer is 36. Do you agree? Explain your answer. So he's saying that 2/3 down here, he's saying that 2/3 of 24 is 36. He divided 24 by 2 and times it by 3. Now, he is incorrect, okay, so we should not be agreeing with him. Now, what he has done wrong is instead of dividing by his denominator and then multiplying by his numerator, he's done it the other way round. Okay, so he's divided it by his numerator and then multiplied it by his denominator. So he's got them mixed up. So what he's kind of done there is if it was like 3 halves, okay? But if we're finding 2/3 of 24, then we are going to divide, okay, by our denominator. So 24 divided by 3 is 8, and then we multiply it by our numerator. And 8 times 2 is 16. So if you have said that you don't agree, you get a tick for that. If you have explained, so if you said he has divided by his numerator instead of his denominator, or and then multiplied by his denominator instead of his numerator. If you have said that, you get another tick for that. And if you have given the right answer, and you get a tick for that. So possible 3 marks for that Secure It for yesterday's work. So well done if you've got those. If you haven't, and then you can just rewind it and watch this a little bit again to check that you've understood how we got that answer. Okay, well done, guys. So today's learning then, it's Thursday the 23rd of April. And we're going to be looking at finding equivalent fractions. Okay, so pause me for a second whilst you write that in your book. Okay, superstars. Right, I have underlined the word equivalent because it's a very, very important word. We have used it before. Have a little think or see if you can remember what equivalent means. If something is equivalent to something else, what do we think that means? There's a little clue in there if you're a little word detective. You might see the equa bit. Hopefully that reminds you of equal. So if I was just to underline that bit without the I and that bit, it is equal. So that means if something is equal to something else, if it's equivalent, that means they are the same, they have the same value, or they are equal. Okay, so we're looking at fractions that look different but are equal. Okay, so I have got here my favorite food. I have got pizzas. All right, I've got 4 different pizzas. Well, they all actually look exactly the same. They've all got the same amount of pepperoni slices on, which again is also my favorite type of pizza. But they've all been cut different ways. Okay, so the first one, this first pizza, it has been cut with a line down the middle. Okay, so I'm just going to scribble over this one part. Okay, it's been split into equal parts. So very quickly, have a little look. What would be the fraction of that pizza? Okay, hopefully you've all shouted out that it is 1/2. So if I've eaten that, I've eaten 1/2 of that pizza. Okay, there are 2 equal parts. So our denominator tells us how many equal parts there are altogether. There are 2 equal parts there. And we're looking at just one of those equal parts. All right, so that is 1/2. Now, if we move on to this next pizza here, all right, now this is slightly different because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. Okay, so our denominator is 4. Now I'm going to eat this piece and I'm going to eat this piece. How many of those 4 equal parts have I eaten? 2. I've eaten 2/4. What do you notice about how much of that pizza is shaded in compared to this pizza, our first one? What do you notice about how much I've shaded in, how much I've eaten between these 2 pizzas? What do we notice? They've been split, they've been cut differently, but what's the same? Hopefully you are screaming that I've still eaten half, although the fraction looks different. Although my denominator here is 4 and my numerator is 2, I have still eaten the same amount. I've eaten half the pizza. So 1/2 and 2/4 is equivalent. Okay, now do just see if you can spot anything there. I'm just going to draw this. I'm not going to say anything, but what do you notice about our denominators and our numerator? What happens to our denominators and our numerators there? What's happened between those? We'll come back to that in a bit. Just keep an eye on it and see if you can spot any patterns. Okay, now this next pizza here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal parts there. Okay, so my denominator is 6. I've got 6 equal parts. I'm going to eat this one, this slice, this slice, this slice. I do love pizza. Okay, so I've eaten those slices there. I've eaten 3 out of those 6 equal parts. So I've eaten 3/6. Now, what do we notice again? What's the same about those 3 pizzas so far? I've eaten half of all of them. Okay, so 1/2 is also equivalent to 3/6. Now, what do you notice? Oh, what do you notice about these fractions? Put my red pen on. Is it on? Yep. If it's equivalent to half, what do you notice about your numerator and your denominator? Sorry, guys, that's Paddy getting excited. What do we notice about our numerator and your denominator? If these fractions are equivalent to half, what do we notice about our numerator and our denominator? Okay. Now onto the last pizza. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal parts all together. Okay, can you guess how many pieces I'm going to eat? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've eaten 4 of my 8 equal parts. Now have a look at those 4 pizzas all together. Okay, what have I done on every single one of those? I've shaded in 1/2 of each of those pizzas. Now because they've been split into different amounts, the fractions all look different. However, what do you notice about your numerators and your denominators? If that fraction is equivalent to half, what do you notice about your numerator and your denominator? If you think you know, then just have a quick little guess. Can you work out or predict? If I had a pizza and I cut it into 12 equal parts, what would be my numerator be if I ate half of that pizza? Have a little think about it. What do you notice? If I've got half here, if my denominator is 2, then my numerator is 1, and that's half. In quarters, if my denominator is 4, and I've eaten half of something, then I've eaten 2 quarters. Here, in sixths, if I've eaten half, if it's been split into 6 equal parts and I eat half of it, it's 3/6. Then I've got 4/8. What's going to be my numerator if I have 12 equal parts and I eat half? It will be 6. Okay. Hopefully then, when you've noticed that when we find fractions equivalent to half, our numerator is half the amount of our denominator. Okay, so that's a really easy way to find fractions that are equivalent to 1/2 without even having pictures or representations there to help us. Okay, so that's one little trick we can use when looking at equivalent fractions. Now here it's slightly different. I've got 3 different representations. I've labelled them A, B and C. So first I just want to check that I know what fraction is being represented in each picture there, in each bar model. Okay, so for A, have a little think how many equal parts. I know you can see those little dotted lines, but that's just the background, so don't worry about those. But you can see it's been split into equal parts, and then some parts have been shaded in pink. So for A, what fraction is shaded pink? Brilliant. Hopefully you've all shouted 1 part out of 3 equal parts. Okay. And B, how many equal parts have been shaded out of the equal parts altogether? Well, I can see that altogether I've got 6 equal parts there. Okay, and 2 have been shaded. And for C, I've got 3, 6, 9. I've got 9 equal parts altogether, and 3 have been shaded. Okay, now what do you notice about these bits that have been shaded? What can you say about those bars? They all look the same. Okay, the same amount of bar has been shaded on each one. However, the fractions are different. If all of these black lines here were taken away, then the pink sections would all be exactly the same. All right, so I'm just going to show you now, if I move this away, those 3 fractions there. So we've got 1/3 was the first one, then 2/6 was B, and then 3/9 was C. Okay, so those fractions are all equivalent. Okay, they are equal to one another. They all look exactly the same. It's just your denominators and your numerators are slightly different. Now, what do you notice? Can you spot a pattern at all between our denominators? Okay, what do you do to 3? What's happening to our denominators? Okay, what are they going up in? Can you spot what's happening up here? What's the pattern? So if we look at just our numerators, it has 1, 2, 3. If I was to follow that pattern, I'd have 4 next. What would happen then to our denominator? 3, 6, 9. What would come next? 4/12. Now I can double check that. If I if I use B actually, and what I'm going to do is, because I've got 6 parts there, I'm going to split each 6th into in half. So now I've got 12 equal parts altogether. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So B now has 12ths. Okay, I've not shaded anything else in, but how many of those 12 parts are shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 twelfths would be equal. Now I didn't have a bar model to do that. I just followed the pattern and found what was equivalent to it. Okay. Now here I have got some chocolate bars. Probably my second favourite treat, chocolate. Now my first chocolate bar, I have split it. Well, it's got different blocks in. Now that doesn't mean I have to split it into those blocks. So to begin with, I'm going to simply split that first one in half like that. Okay. And if I eat that bit, I've eaten 1 half. Okay. Now, if I split my second block, how do I want to split? I'm going to split it there. I've got now 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 equal parts. Okay. If I colour in that same amount, I'm going to do it in a different colour though. If I colour in that same section up here, okay. How many of those 4 equal parts have I shaded in? I've shaded in 1, 2. Okay. So 2 equal parts. Now, if I split this one, I'm going to split this into the blocks that we can see actually. Okay, so I've now got 8 equal parts there. So I'm looking at eighths. If I shade in that same half again, how many eighths have I shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's another example there, okay, of fractions equivalent to 1 half. Now here, my fractions are slightly different, okay. Now, if I'm going to split my first chocolate bar into 1, 2, 3. Okay, I've got 3 equal parts there. My next one, I'm going to split into 1, 2, 3, and then split all of those in half. So I've got 6. Okay, and then my next one, I'm going to split. I've got 6. Like that, and then yeah, split each of those chunks in half as well. Okay, so I've now got 12 equal parts there. Okay, so if we've looked at 1/3 before, I'm just going to very quickly go over it again. So there I've shaded in 1/3, 1 out of the 3 equal parts. Now here, I shaded in the same amount of that chocolate bar. However, this chocolate bar is split into 6 equal parts. How many of those 6 have I shaded in? 2. Okay, now this one, it hasn't got 9. This bottom one has got 12 equal parts that I'm going to still shade in that same. I've just still colouring in the same as that top one, okay, this end chunk, okay, but I have 12 equal parts, 12 equal parts. And how many of those 12 have I just shaded in? 4. Okay, so these are all equivalent to 1/3. Now, if I shade in another little bit as well, I'm just going to get a different colour. If I shade in this bit too, we can't see that very well, can we? Let me put the blue on, sorry. Okay, I'm going to shade in that bit there now. So now, how many of those 3 equal parts have I shaded in? 2. I've got 2/3. I'm going to do the same here. How many of those 6 equal parts have I shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the same here. I've got 12 equal parts down here. Okay, can you see the same amount of these chocolate bars have been shaded in? All three have got the same amount coloured in, they've got the same amount left, but the fractions, well, if they've been split into equal parts, are different. Okay, so I've got 4, I've got 8/12 there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very quickly write those and see if we can spot a pattern. Let me just get rid of this bit here. I'm going to write them very quickly down here. So that was 2/3. It's equivalent to 4/6, which is equivalent to 8/12. Okay. Can you spot a pattern there? Just have a little, if you need to pause it, you can. Look at your denominators. What's happening to your denominators? So 3 into 6, can you spot a pattern there? 3 into 6, 6 into a 12. What's happening each time? And then have a look at your numerators. What's happened there? 2 to 4 and 4 to an 8. What's the pattern between those? Have a little think about that, okay, and see if that can help you with the next exam, with your do-its. Okay, so in your book, now I'm not going to ask you to draw all of these bars out because that can get quite fiddly, especially if you've not got squares in your exercise books at home. So please, please, please do not stress about drawing those out. You'll have it on your screen here to help you. So in a minute, when I finish explaining it, just pause it. It is only 4 for your do-it, okay, because each one's actually got 3 things you need to write. So number 1, the only thing that you're going to be writing in your book is these bits here, okay. You're going to use the bar models above to help you, but this is all you need to write in. I'll get rid of those in a second for you so you can see them. But those are the only bits that you need to write in your books, okay? You're just showing me the equivalent fractions that are being represented. So for your first one, number 1, you've got 1/4. So have a look at that top bar. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. One of them is shaded in yellow, okay? That's why you've got 1/4 written there. How many eighths is that equivalent to? So on your next bar, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got 8 equal parts there. 2 of them are shaded in. So what is the fraction? Okay, you're just telling me what the fraction is that's being represented, okay? The only thing that might trick you here is number 4. I've been a little bit mean and I've not shown all of the equivalent fractions. I've not represented all of them, okay? I've told you the first one. I've got 2/3, okay? 2/3 down here is written for you. What is that equivalent to for the next 2 bar models? And I've not given you the denominators, okay, like the other question. So you've got to check, be very, very careful. How many equal parts are there on your next 2 bars? And if you were to shade it in so that it's equivalent to your first bar, to your 2/3, what would it be? You might not even need to use the bars for that. You might be able to use the trick, or you might be able to spot a pattern there, okay? So pause me and have a go at that. And when you're done, just press play again and I'll explain and secure it for you. Good luck. Okay, so once you've done your do it, here is your secure that I'd like you to do in your book as well. Okay, Ellie says that 1/3 is equivalent to 3/6. Is she correct? Explain why. Okay, so in your book, you can either say, yes, she's correct because, or no, she's not correct because. Now, to explain that, you might want to have a go at showing the trick that we've been talking about, the pattern that we've been trying to spot, or you might want to draw a bar model to represent it if you want to, but make sure your bars are the same length. So you'd need a ruler to do that, okay, to show me that. All right, so, or tell me if you know that something's equivalent to something else, you can do that. All right, so good luck, guys. Oh, in fact, what do you notice about 3/6? That might help you. You might be able to tell me what else that's equivalent to help prove your answer. Okay, good luck, guys. We will mark these at the start of tomorrow's lesson, okay, on the video. So I will see you then. Bye, guys. Well done. Good luck.
Hello everyone, welcome to your writing session for today. We're going to kick off again with our sentence doctor, but I've got a real challenge for you today. So we're still looking for those punctuation mistakes like we've been looking for all week. So capital letters, full stops, speech marks, apostrophes, commas, exclamation marks, question marks. But today
I've got just one sentence for you. It's a complicated sentence, and there are 10 pieces of punctuation that I have missed out from this sentence. I haven't put any in at all. I need all 10 finding, okay? So copy out the sentence, put in the punctuation marks, and come back to me when you've got there. The sentence today is, "Don't go," screamed Joe. "I still need you." Pause the video, write it out with all the punctuation, and come back to me and we'll go through the answers. Okay, did you get them all? All 10? Let's have a look. Okay, so we've got our speech today. We've got "Don't go," which was a set of speech. So we've got speech marks to hold that in. Screamed Joe. "I still need you" is our second piece of speech. So we've got 4 speech marks missing in here. Okay, speech always starts with a capital letter. We know that. So we've got a capital D. "Don't" apostrophe because it's a contraction for "do not." And then remembering that if we've got a set of speech marks, we have to have some punctuation inside it, otherwise the words all fall out. So in this case, it's a comma because we're carrying on with our speech in a minute. We're jumping past this bit and carrying on with the same speech. So "Don't go," screamed Joe. Joe needed a capital letter because that's her name. Start our speech marks again. Capital I, which is what we talked about yesterday. "I still need you." Speech marks at the end. And again, that punctuation, we're going to go with an exclamation mark here. Because it sounds like he's shouting, because it says "screamed Joe." Sounds like he's shouting. We're going to put an exclamation mark in there, and you should have 10 missing pieces of punctuation. I hope you managed to get all of them today. I've got a real tricky one again for you tomorrow, so hopefully you've learnt lots from that one today. So we're going back now to our discussion text. So yesterday we were looking at our purpose, and we were looking at our structure and how it's written, and we were practicing using our causal conjunctions and our oppositional conjunctions, okay? So just remind me what the purpose of the discussion text is. Have a little think. What's its job? What's it trying to do? If you need to have a little look at the discussion text again, it is in your work packs today in the PDF that's attached on the website to this video. So what is the purpose of a discussion text? Brilliant. So the purpose of our discussion text is to give both sides of the argument. So they give the reasons why we should get rid of zoos, why we shouldn't get rid of zoos, and then leave the reader to make up their own mind, okay? So we looked at this yesterday and we started to build this with some of our ideas. So we said the purpose was to give our reader both sides of the argument, to give them some information so they can make up their own mind. And we said we were going to do that through a variety of different ways. We're going to give them facts and numbers, expert opinions, use some persuasive language, and we were definitely going to use those connectors that we were practicing yesterday. But today's focus is all about the introduction. We're going to be having a little look at what types of arguments we're going to be saying, and we're also going to be having a look at how we're going to start that piece of work as well. So the main thing that we need for our discussion text are our arguments. So should Fox be shot? Yes, he should, says the farmers. No, he shouldn't, says Mrs. Fox. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video. I want 3 reasons why you think he should be shot and 3 reasons why he shouldn't. So you can draw yourself a little table in your books and then put down 3 reasons why he should be shot, 3 reasons why he shouldn't be shot, and then come back to me and we'll have a little think about them. So pause the video and write down 3 reasons for yes, 3 reasons for no. Off you go. Okay, brilliant. Did you get 3 reasons for both? Right, let's have a little look. So perhaps you had some of the same reasons that I had. Perhaps you have something different. Perhaps mine can add to your list. But let's have a little reason. So, should Fox be shot? The farmers say yes. And the farmers say yes because they're stealing things that don't belong. He's stealing things that don't belong to him. He's scaring the chickens. And he's killing innocent animals. That's 3 of the reasons. There were loads more that you could have picked from the book as well. So the other answer to the question is, should Fox be shot? No, because his family are starving. No, because all foxes eat chickens. It's part of the food chain. It's what they should be able to do. And no, because the farmers have forced him to do it because he couldn't get out of his hole. So because the farmers are making it so difficult, That's why the fox is being so unkind. So these are our reasons that we're going to put into our discussion text. Now, you've got other reasons. That's great. You choose 3 that you think are the best reasons. And this becomes our plan for our writing as we move forward. So today's all about the introduction. If you remember yesterday when we were looking at this, we were said in our introduction that our introduction needed to tell us a bit about the subject, and it needed to tell us why the discussion was important. So let's remind ourselves by reading this introduction through. So zoos were originally set up so that people could learn more about wild animals from distant lands. As more people became city dwellers, never seeing animals in the wild, zoos began to house local animals too. But this has caused some people to become very angry. The issues of whether zoos are morally right remains a major issue, with people raising valid arguments both for and against. Yet a difficult decision must be made. Are zoos really necessary? We're going to use this example today to write our own introduction. So we've got our arguments now. We know what we're going to talk about when we get to the main body of our text. So we're going to focus on our introduction. So we're going to step away from this screen for a minute and we're going to do a bit of writing together in a second. But what I'd like to do is show you some other introductions. So on the screen are 2 different introductions to 2 other discussion texts. Which one do you think is most effective? Why do you think that's a better introduction? Just pause the video, have a read. Which one do you think is best and why? Okay, so having read both of those introductions, which one do you think is most effective? I think there's some good points in both of them. The bit that I really like about this one is it gives you a bit of a clue as to the arguments. So some people believe that. On the other hand, some people believe. So it actually gives you both sides of the argument. I like this one because it talks about this debate is of vital importance because his mother is very worried. So it tells us why it's important for us to discuss this. So I might use some of those ideas when I'm going to write my own introduction for our discussion text. So we're going to step away from the screen for a second and we're going to have a look at writing our introduction. Okay, so here we are in a Word document ready to do some writing. So we know our title, Should Fox Be Shot? So I'm just going to underline my title so that I know that that's my title. And you'll see here that I've wrote down those things that we found out about our introduction that I want to make sure I include in my introduction. So it tells people about the topic. Right, so I need a sentence that tells people what my topic's going to be about. So I'm going to start with foxes. Foxes can be a real nuisance to farmers. They get in all sorts of trouble and they can really cause serious damage. Okay, I used the word serious there because I wanted that emotive language. Remember we talked about getting people to persuade people to want to know more about your argument so they can get in serious trouble. So I've told people a little bit about the topic. They can be a real nuisance to farmers. They get in all sorts of trouble and cause really serious damage. Introduces the argument. So I'm going to use the lines that I saw in the mobile phone one. So some people think that foxes are bad and should be shot. Oh, that's not a great word, is it? Wonder what other words I could use for bad. Let's have a look. Oh, evil, wicked, corrupt. Oh, let me have a little think. Some people think foxes are evil. Oh no, some people think foxes are wicked. Quite like that. A bit of a more emotive language. And should be shot. However, and if you remember, this was our opposition connective, wasn't it, from yesterday? However, other people think that they are just doing what is natural. Okay. Okay, the third part then explains why it's important. This debate is, remember from Jack, of vital importance. I liked that phrase, so I'm going to use that in mine as well. Because Boggis, Bunce and Bean are trying to kill Mr. Fox right now. Oh, made a mistake. Okay, so I just need to check that this sounds really effective piece of writing. Let's go back then. So, should Fox be shot? Foxes can be a real nuisance to farmers. They get in all sorts of trouble and they can really cause serious damage. Some people think that foxes are wicked and should be shot. However, other people think that they are just doing what is natural. This debate is of vital importance because Boggis, Bunce and Bean are trying to kill Mr. Fox right now. Does it tell people about the topic? Yep. Does it introduce the argument? Yep. Does it explain why it's important? Yeah. Brilliant. So I'm quite happy with that as my introduction, and that's what you've got to do today. So, back to your challenge for today. So your challenge today is to write the introduction for your discussion text. Just those 3 sentences. It's not a huge amount, but that means that I want those sentences to be absolutely perfect. Go back, reread them, check them, change the words, try and make them the best 3 sentences that you can. And I haven't left you with nothing. So should foxes be shot is our title. You're going to tell people about the topic, and here are some possible sentence starters you could use. Introduce the arguments and then explain why it's important. And here are some different sentences that you could use while you're doing that. So you're going to pause the video now and write your introduction, ready for us to carry on with this writing tomorrow. Okay, pause the video now. Okay, super. I hope you've done a really good introduction. I hope it's looking really smart and that you've used all of that emotive language and the persuasion in there as well, and you've been really clear and informative in your writing. So what we are going to do now is have a look at our connected curriculum for today, and then tomorrow we're going to carry on and finish this piece of writing so we can send it in to Miss Cunnington and Miss Foster. So for connected curriculum today, again, it's those same challenges that we've been working on all week. You should have picked one by now. So it should be either making World of Wonders top trump cards, making an information poster about one of the wonders of the world, or creating that interactive map, remembering that we're thinking really carefully about maps and the world and different countries and the location of those countries, and trying to use words and vocabulary to express that to people, and looking in that workbook to make sure you've got all of the information that you need before you're going to send those in. Making sure once you've done them that you send them in to us so we can see how you're getting on. And I shall see you tomorrow for your final bit of learning for this week. Bye guys!